Around the time of the First World War, it started as a float camp. Then in the 40s, it became a logging camp, so employees of Canadian forest products could live close to work. But now the town is dying. The company says it's just too expensive to keep it alive. And to use the corporate language, they're phasing it out. But most of the 51 families who still live here want to stay, and they are prepared to buy the place to do it.
Mike and Mary Addison have been living in Nimpkish Lake for 9 years. When he is not a faller for Canadian forest products, Mike is chairman of the Nimpkish Lake Community Society. In his after-hours role, he is fighting to take his community away from his employer's control. He and others want the provincial government to make the company town an improvement district that would place Nimpkish Lake under the jurisdiction of the regional district. And what they want to do is not a cheap proposition.
Aren't you clinging to something that is just not viable anymore?
No, we don't feel that way. We like it here. We'd like to stay living here, and as far as our costs have shown, it would be economical to stay.
How though? What does Hydro tell you that they could do to provide power to this place in terms of cost?
Well, Hydro has made a off-the-record quote that it would cost the families approximately $1,600 a piece, and then they'd have to pay a monthly cost that would be comparable to Port McNeill.
Are you prepared to pay $1,600 for that, buy the house from the company, and set up another community? Is it worthwhile for you?
Oh yeah, we'd all be willing to do that because we've looked at the cost of housing elsewhere.
But the company has very generously offered to give you $10,000 to move somewhere else, Port McNeill.
Well, the $10,000 is only good if you've worked for the company for 10 years, and it would be taxable at $1,000 a year, and $10,000 doesn't amount to much when you have to pay $115,000 for a house.
This is the kind of life the 51 families who still live in Nimpkish Lake are used to. They live cheaply in company houses on the shores of a mountain lake. This is what Port McNeill looks like. It is about a 25-minute drive from the logging camp. The company has offered $10,000 interest-free loans to families willing to move there. A big problem in Nimpkish Lake is power. Electricity is produced from diesel fuel, and Canadian Forest Products says it is losing $1 million every year.
Down there to look at houses.
The first day that we looked, we didn't sit down and talk what we could afford. We just started looking with the real estate lady, and she took us to see 4 houses that ranged between $113,000 to $120,000. The next day we went back, sat down and talked about what we could really afford, and it was completely out of the question for us. I couldn't consider paying that price in Port McNeill when I could see how much more I could get for considerably less and for what I could afford in places like Courtenay or Campbell River.
How much do you think it would cost you to buy this house when you're in now?
About $30,000.
Mm-hmm. What are you faced with, Mike? You've been off work for how long now?
Well, 2 months.
And a rich faller. You hear about all this money the fallers make.
It's not true.
What happens to you if you have to move to Port McNeill then? What are your concerns?
Well, basically I have to borrow a lot of money to buy a house, and that means mortgage payments.
On top of this forgivable grant that the company's prepared to give you.
Yeah, and I mean, being off work 2 months doesn't help my chances of making my payments.
There are 33 company houses still standing in Nimpkish Lake. As families move out, no one else is invited in. The town stands on tree farm license land, and the company wants this part of it to produce timber again. Several families have already moved out. Some of the houses are boarded up and either sold and moved out of town or destroyed. In their place, the company is planting new trees. And this is what Nimpkish Lake is about to become.
Here we are at the edge of town. Now, something has disappeared out of here. What's missing?
Oh, there's 2 houses that have gone. They were well-established homes in need of repair, but livable with a little bit of work.
What happened to them?
Well, they were vacated. The people who were in them moved out, and they weren't allowed to be refilled.
And they're just burned down?
Oh, they just sat here for a while, and of course they come and they stripped out the furnaces and the plumbing and what have you, and left them more or less to rot in the weather.
So they were in pretty bad shape anyway, were they?
They were essentially, yes, because they hadn't been tended. If they'd been lived in, they would have been not too bad.
Now, I think I see the beginnings of what the company wants to do with Nimpkish, new trees.
It appears that way.
What do you think about the way the company, why don't we just walk down the road here, and what do you think about what Canfor has done and the way they've handled this whole situation?
Well, it was handled, I think, with a little bit of not too much forethought on their part. They may have had their great plan in mind, but they didn't take into consideration the people at all. They've offered us incentives to move and such, but it's the lifestyle we're after, not necessarily city life or country life for that matter, but the family as a general, staying together.
You're the mother of 2 children. Won't your children be better off in Port McNeill? The company says the schools are better there, the recreational
No, I
facilities.
totally disagree. I was raised in a rural setting, somewhat similar to this. The schools are adequate. You have a one-to-one relationship with your teachers. The facilities, if we want them, we can go for them. In the meantime, the time we spend with our children is very important, and that's essentially what the people here are after.
Don't you think, though, in a sense, that towns like Nimpkish Lake are becoming dinosaurs?
That's an awful sad fact if it's true. I think that bringing the people back together in small communities is an asset to a province or a country or whatever.
Do you understand the company's position that this town is it's just too expensive for them to run?
That's what they tell us, but you know, they've never given us any figures. They quote this $1 million loss a year and what have you. The figures we've worked out, they may be optimistic, but they're a lot closer than $1 million a year. A lot more realistic than $1 million a year. I don't see where they're spending it. I may be very naive, but I can't see it.
Now the company is also saying that if you like these houses so much, well, we'll sell them to you, but you gotta move them. Does that make any sense to you?
It makes sense from their side. It doesn't from ours. It's we'd have trouble moving them into cities because they're not exactly up to standard. For instance, the wiring is only 110, not 220.
The cost would be astronomical, wouldn't it, to move a whole house somewhere else?
I imagine so. A lot of these houses were moved in here to begin with. They were on skids and they were brought in. Some of them are set on cement foundations, others aren't.
Well, are you getting the clear impression sometimes that, although you're not being evicted, that you're really not wanted all that much?
All the time. It just is, it's not said, it's just implied. It's like, come on, hurry up.
Mm-hmm. Are they giving you a deadline?
They gave a deadline of 18 months to 3 years to begin with. Then they revised their plan and said that no one would be evicted, but no one was going to be allowed to move in. And it's the new blood in a community coming in that keeps the community alive.
And then there are the people who have spent most of their lives here and don't want to give up this kind of scenery. And it is the setting that the company thinks will attract too many people and threaten their timber rights if the company is allowed to survive. Ray Wilkinson has been living here for 24 years.
Ray, I can just see by looking around here why you would want to stay. Have you told the company that, your real reasons why you want to stay here?
Yeah, I've told them the real reasons. At least they know my feelings anyways.
What are they? Tell me what they are.
Just love it here and the quietness and the house, the surroundings.
Do you understand the company's point of view, though, that it's just not economically feasible to keep the place going?
I understand their point of view, but I don't believe it.
Why then should Nimpkish Lake stay here?
Because of the people's feelings, and plus it's close to our work area.
You know, the company's got a point also. They say that if this place did become a community, they'd have everybody down here. It's so beautiful. We'd have summer cottages and everything else, and they'd lose some very valuable forest land.
That's true, yeah, but still, people are people, and, you know, you just can't crowd them all into one area, like Port McNeill or any other big city.
Well, the company says they're not evicting anyone.
Yeah, that's true, but there's a lot of intimidation, and that's scaring people.
What do you mean by that?
Intimidation? Well, burning those 2 houses, and last week they scored 3 empty trailer lots, and that's intimidation.
So you're getting the clear message that you're not altogether welcome here anymore?
That's the feeling we get, and if only they would wait until the ministry comes down with a decision, which should be in about a month, 2 months, and they left the lots alone, then we wouldn't be intimidated.
Have you been given any indication that the company is prepared to give you that amount of time?
No, because they claim that they're going to plant trees on those empty lots by March the 1st.
And have they done that?
No, they've scored up 3 lots, but they've still got to score up the remainder. And I think there's about 16 lots.
You're pretty well determined to stay then.
Yeah, with apprehension, yeah. Determined to wait until a decision is made by the government.